In this video, I explain you how to do a proper line check and sound check. So that's the third video in Unit 4, and at this point we assume you did proper event planning, you did arrive at the venue, you did set up the PA, you did also test the PA, and you made already sure that the PA sounds well. You also did microphone feedback elimination with a graphic EQ. So basically now you're ready to do a line check and a sound check. So let's go through this material with each other and check how can we do this properly. There is a difference between a line check and a sound check. In a line check you don't necessarily need the band. You can do it on your own, and basically the goal of a line check is to just check if all the cables are connected properly. So you just check, is there a signal coming into the mixer from the different instruments, but you don't check how it sounds. You just look if the signal is routed the right way. And then later on you will need the band to do the sound check. But first, line check, how do you do it? So first thing to do, put the gain to the lowest position at 0, mute all outputs, bypass the EQ, so there is no it's not necessary that there is sound coming out of the speakers. Then make sure that in the mixer you do the routing. So most modern mixers, they do have a patch bay or like a patch table where you can assign mixing console channels to stage box channels. So do this routing, also name the channels, and then you basically start by checking the outputs. That's very important. In a line check you also check the outputs, not just the inputs. So when you have a band and every band member uses an in-ear headphones, then I normally play a song from my phone and then I just go through the different in-ears or floor wedges for the monitoring or whatever it is, and I play a song and raise the level. I turn up the volume of that specific speaker or in-ear to see if the right in-ear is getting the sound. This is very important. I not always did it, and sometimes two in-ears were the wrong way around, so the sound of two band members was always swapped and it took us often a long time to find out what the issue was, and that's really precious time you don't want to lose during a sound check. So make sure all the outputs get the correct signal, and then do a line check of the input channels. And this I normally do with muted channels. Actually, I would even recommend to do it with muted channels, because what we do is, for microphones we just touch the head of the mic a little bit to generate some noise. And then we check at the mixer if it arrives at the right channels. For DI boxes you can probably plug and unplug the jack cable on the DI box to see if your signal goes up and down when you plug and unplug. In this way you can also already set all phantom power, so it won't in the line check you will immediately see if it works. If the signal is not arriving, you can it could be the phantom power, so you can also already here make sure all the phantom power is set correctly. So line checks take some time, so plan some time for this. It really helps to get a fast sound check later on. And then basically at this point you're ready for the band to come. So now everything is set up such that a sound check can start. All the cables are connected correctly, PA is set up well, so now you're basically ready for the band to come and to do the sound check. Yeah, important here, everything we discussed until now does officially not belong to the sound check. It's all setup and preparations. Just now it's when the sound check starts. So basically you can tell the band to come at this point. Most often the band comes earlier because they also have to set up things like they have to set up their drums. Especially drum is really takes a lot of time, so the drummer might be here early, but also the other band members might have to prepare some stuff and often will be arriving early. Very important here, you are the leader of the sound check. So if you don't say anything, no one should do anything. You're really responsible to get a nice sound check, because the only goal is of the sound check is that that we can do the settings in the console such that they are ready for the event. So basically it's only you who needs the sound check, and of course the band for the in-ear or for the monitoring. So just be aware of that. It's actually you who decides who does what, because you know the best what is needed such that it sounds well at the end. So also take that responsibility always and communicate clearly to everyone who has to do what. Give good commands to the band members such that really they know what they have to do. And don't let them decide what we do in the sound check. You're the one who should decide what to do in the sound check. All right, so then when we start the sound check, we basically go through every instrument one by one, through every vocal one by one, and the start point for every instrument and vocal is always each channel fader is at -infinity, it is muted, and the gain is at 0. That's always where we start. And then we do as follows. So for every instrument we follow this 7-step process. In step number 1 we tell the band member to play or sing sing into the mic or play their instrument. Then the first thing we do is we push the pre-fader listening button of the current channel to see how far up the gain goes, or for digital console we often just have to select the channel to see how far the signal is going up the scale. That was number 2. Then number 3, remember here the channel is still muted and the fader is still down, so we set the gain up to 0 dB, or as explained in other videos as well, below 0 dB, depends on the dB scale there. So set the gain, make sure there is some spare volume left, so the gain should not be close to peaking. There should be some spare range you can use to gain more or less. If you have more experience, you can also adjust the gain such that the unity position of the fader is the signal is at event volume. That's probably a little bit of a special point. It's just like some sound engineers, they like it to put the fader exactly at unity position and then set the gain such that the event volume is correct. I normally don't do it. I normally set the gain such that it is in a good range on the dB scale. Yeah, that's basically how I would suggest to proceed here. And just then you can unmute the channel and push the fader up until the sound is at event volume. So next thing you can do here is set low pass filter and edit EQ to make the instrument sound nicely, and then next you compress the signal and set a proper gate. I normally don't do effects during the sound check, I normally do effects after the sound check. So I basically really just gain it first, unmute it, push the fader up, I do set EQ, I do set compressor, and I do set gates. And sometimes there is inserts, so I do set inserts also. And this is literally the process I follow for every instrument. Yeah, sometimes I also have to tell the band members to play the instrument a little bit different, especially for, let's say, electric guitar. I often tell them to strum and also to pick. Depends on what type of music it is, of course. Also the bass, if I know he will also use slap, I ask the bass player to also slap, so I can sound check the slap bass too. Yes, so but that's basically the process you follow. So you will do all of the instruments, all the vocals one by one, and after you did that, your sound check is not yet finished. You're at a good point already, but there is some more things to do. So next thing you tell the band is they should play a song. Probably even tell them which song they should play, so that you can set. I normally tell the band to play a song like an upbeat song, a song with like a fast pace, because often I experience that during the sound check, especially the vocals, they don't sing at full level. Often they sing more quiet during the sound check than on the event itself. So this is why I then tell them to basically play a song which is like louder, which is fast paced, so they sing their max level, so you would be able to adjust the gains a bit back, like a bit lower, in case they sing now louder than they did before. So yeah, you tell the band which song to play, and then as soon as they play it, try to, as fast as possible, just get a rough mix. It does not have to sound good yet, but just try to get a mix which is not feedbacking, which is some more or less sounding nice at event level. Try to get at event level as fast as possible. This is also important for the in-ear monitoring, or the monitoring of the band, because the speakers, despite they're in front of the band, the speakers have a big influence on their monitoring experience. So try to get to event volume as fast as possible, and then just start to optimize your mix and help the band with monitoring. So there might be multiple rounds necessary to change the monitoring again. There might be multiple songs necessary to get a good mix. So that's basically how you do sound check. That's it basically. I just added here a few more comments I have for sound checks, just things I experienced in the past which could be important for you. Always be aware voices and drums are taking up the most time, especially the drum. It takes a lot of time to do the whole drum sound check, and for the voices, just also take the most time to do it, because they're the most important part in the mix, so make sure they sound nice. Then after our drum parts are checked, let the drummer also always play the whole drum, so you can make sure the whole drum is sounding nicely. And also the overhead mics, just check them when he plays the whole drum, because the overhead mics do not just pick the cymbals, but they pick up the whole drum. So I normally don't sound check the overheads until all of the drum parts are played, and I then sound check it when the drummer plays the whole drum at once. Make sure there is no feedback on monitors. So often people just do graphic EQing on the mains, but the monitors will then be the speakers who generate feedback during the event. So make sure there is no feedback frequencies on the monitors. Then number 4, if needed, tell the drummer to tape the snare or toms to get less reverb. Yeah, often I experience bad drum sound because the drum is not prepared properly. So just check also with the drummer that he tapes the snare such that there is not too much reverb, or just that there is as much reverb as you and the drummer think it's nice. Number 5, make sure the volume on stage is as low as possible. Yeah, that's really an important point for me too. Just try to get down that volume on stage as good as possible. The stage should be as quiet as possible. This means move electric guitar amps backstage somewhere, move bass amps backstage somewhere. Try to use in-ear monitoring instead of floor wedges. In this way you get a clean and quiet stage sound, and you can control the mix in the room much better, because as soon as, especially for small venues, as soon as you have speakers and monitors and stuff on the stage generating a lot of sound, this will leak into the room and people will basically hear the stage sound as well, and this is basically destroying your mix. So you want to avoid that. So that was my thoughts about the sound check. That's the process I would heavily recommend you to follow. And yeah, that was the video about how to do the sound check.